Justin Ellege, medical intuitive. Oh, sorry if I didn't pronounce your last name correctly. Maybe you could, when you introduce yourself and tell your life story in just a minute or so, you can tell me how your last name is actually pronounced there. So it's great having you on because, like I told you in the pre-show conversation, medical industry needs a revamping. I'm very familiar with it, with having a mother that was an ophthalmologist, worked for 15 years until I unfortunately had to quit that job shortly after she retired because they were suckering up to the dreaded presidential mandate that is haunting a lot of people. Supreme Court just made a big ruling on that recently. Check out the Guns and Gadgets YouTube video channel, folks, if you want to learn about what the Supreme Court ruled. It's kind of a bittersweet thing what they ruled regarding that mandate, but it affected me a lot because I had to get a new job at Whole Foods, and this is actually my second show in as many days, and I'm going to be doing 3 shows in 3 days, and I kind of owe it to my listeners not having done a show in about a month. Still have to upload the one I did yesterday to YouTube before I upload yours, but don't worry, I'm going to get right to that as soon as I finish this interview with you to make sure this information gets out there to YouTube. And Cost.tv is another channel I upload shows to, but only the abridged version. Patreon subscribers will get the full version. I'll make a note of that halfway through this interview when it's the official start of the pay-per-view part of the interview. But without further ado, Justin, and again, please tell me how your last name is pronounced. The human MRI medical intuitive. Who are you? What did you experience? You got the floor. Tell us your life story. And like I always tell all my guests at the beginning of the show, I do not have Alex Jones-itis. I don't interrupt people, so I'll shut up and put myself on mute and let you. Oh, you find that funny, huh? Okay. Well,
that's classic. Yeah, I used to follow Alex Jones, but that's a story unto itself. Anyhow, yes, I am Justin Ellege, which you had it pretty close to being correct, though most people want to put an R in there for some reason, call it Eldridge, but there is no R. So it's simply Justin Ellege, the human MRI. And thank you, Andrew, for this time and so much more.
Oh, okay. That was short, sweet, and to the point there. Okay, well.
But I will be happy to talk and all the other, give my short story of.
Yeah, please do, because we need to set the stage for the rest of this interview regarding your material, and what better way to do that than you be a primary source regarding what you experienced and what you witnessed that would tell what you learned to enlighten the people.
Thank you so very much for clearing the stage and clearing literally the air. My life has been a journey of many mountains and valleys and rivers and oceans I've crossed. As a kid, I had several injuries that caused me a setback in life. First, took a tumble off of a brick barbecue, which clipped the back of my neck, and my parents were concerned I'd be a quadriplegic or paraplegic. Fortunately, nothing quite so serious, but had some learning disabilities because of it. And so as I grew up, I learned to adapt, and eventually it was like it never happened. So in this earth, in this world, in this lifetime, I've had a few bumpy starts. As over the years, what started me down the path of alternative health was at the age of 14 years old, I started getting migraine headaches. And my mother took me to neurologists and other type of brain doctors, and they all said, if nothing else, you just have to learn to live with it. So telling a 14, 15-year-old that this is just the way it is, I never believed that line of thought. However, they wanted to give me all kinds of drugs like Cafragot and caffeine-based and other products that simply would mask the migraine, but rarely, if ever, would get rid of it. So my father would give me newspaper articles about migraines, and eventually started reading and looking into it, and began to find out about people in the alternative fields of using foods or nutrition or health or healing to start dealing with such issues. And so fast forward about 20 years, though I still had migraines, they became fewer and fewer as I added to the mix. And one time I actually met a doctor who I was having a conversation with, and he said, if you ever got a migraine, come into my office and I'll get rid of it for you. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. So what was his big secret was an IV of magnesium. So it turns out that anyone listening that has migraines, that one of the key factors of what causes migraines is basically a Charlie horse in the brain and in the smaller blood vessels. And that Charlie horse is caused by a lack of magnesium, which is caused by a number of cofactors, including hormonal. But in my case specifically, it turns out that the coincidence was that from the mercury in my fillings that I received at about 13 and a half, from when the braces came off, and 6 months later I started getting migraines. All the years later, I came to realize that it was the mercury fillings in my mouth that had caused the migraines all those years. And now I'm down to maybe one a year. So I've made great strides, and of course cleaned up my diet, so much more. And so that was the first leap forward. Ironically, about that same time, I had gone through this period that I had lost a lot of weight. I had this mysterious wasting illness, and it all started when I had a root canal. Well, that was 1985, and within a year I went from weighing 220 pounds down to 160. So as you can imagine, this was being 1985, 86, 87 period. My family thought I had AIDS or was dying of AIDS because I had all the outward appearance of someone who was wasting away despite eating 2,000 and 3,000 calories a day, T-bone steaks, baked potatoes. I was eating as much food as I could possibly hold every day and still losing weight. So on that particular chapter of my life, I went to see other clinicians. I called the dentist up that had performed the root canal after about a week, after I dropped about 5 pounds. And I asked him point blank, could the root canal have caused this weight loss? And whether he believed it or thought he was telling the truth or was simply lying, it was in fact completely in error, for it was the tooth that was septic and remained septic in my mouth for over 20 years. So I finally had the tooth fixed and redone properly. And then I started gaining weight. I had the color back into my face in late 2004, early 2005. And that was when this miracle happened. Again, along the way, I've done many different positions, worked in different fields, done woodworking. I worked at Mattel Toys once as a model maker and a toy maker, which was fun. I've done a lot of other type of work. I've also been a nurse now for since 1992, so that is be 20 years this year, or 30 years rather, that I've had my vocational nursing license and having spent time working in a hospital. All of this was the backstory to becoming who I am today. So with the passing of the problem with my tooth, and my life completely started shifting in 2005. I was at a retreat center in Southern California up in the mountains, and this was Easter weekend, and a gentleman there was laying on the floor in a lot of pain. And of course, another one of the chapters is I'd learned to become a very adept massage therapist and energy worker as just part of what I was doing. And as I knelt down next to him to put some energy into him, to get him relaxed, to make him feel better, as I closed my eyes, all of a sudden into my mind's eye leapt a picture of a broken rib. And of course, I backed away from the man. I hadn't even put my hands on him. And I looked at him and I said, "Where are you feeling this pain?" And he indicated his right side. And I knew so clearly, without doubt, you, my friend, have a broken rib. And he was a big construction worker and burly guy and everything. And the guy that was working on him just before me was a chiropractor. And of course, when I said you have a broken rib and the guy confirmed the pain right where it was, the chiropractor went white because he realized he could have punctured a lung if this rib had come loose. So 3 days later, the man went down the hill, got x-rays and confirmed what I had seen. And from that day, which was Easter weekend of 2005, I've had this second gift or second sight to see what's going on in the human body. And in my world, I don't see a symptom. I don't see someone with like a disease like, let's say MS, or seeing a person with cancer or whatever. That's all the symptomology. When I look at a person, whether I'm physically in the room or having a conversation like this by phone or by Skype or by Zoom, I get distinct impressions of the cause of the problem that's causing the symptom to manifest. For example, I go back to that issue with my own teeth and the migraine headaches. So one of the things I see very often in my clients is the problems they're having in their mouth, in their teeth, and often to the very exact tooth. I would be talking with a person, I'm seeing on your right molar, on the left-hand side, right rear, second or third tooth, I'm seeing this issue. Oh yeah, that's exactly where I've been feeling this. And the conversation continues. So when I can have something that accurate present to me, and then of course the things to do about it, which is also part of my journey over the last, 50 years of health and healing, that I have this encyclopedic memory in my head, as well as other information that I share with the client. The entire point of the story is most people that come to see me have been to everyone else. They've been to the doctors, the clinicians, the psychotherapists, the hypnotherapists, the other psychics and all that. When they come to see me, it's like they've tried everything. And that's when I come to life. That's when I am given information to help that person heal whatever it is going on in their body. And to have someone email me back or get a text or something that you were right and this took care of it is, as the goosebumps on my arm agree, is my greatest gift to the world, to also have that validated by those people, again, who have never been in the room with me. I've never taken a blood test or any other kind of mechanical device. I just had a text come back from a woman here in Tennessee. No, I'm in North Carolina. She's in Tennessee. And based on what I had for an image for her, I suggested she get her iodine levels checked. And she was having a problem with being conceiving and holding a child in the womb. And so I looked into it and I thought this is exactly what the issue is. And so sure enough, she had her iodine levels checked and they were quite low. And so this is when she had that confirmed by a medical test, it's to me the home run. And that's where the nickname, the human MRI, comes from. Because when I'm looking at someone, it can be at the atomic level or the physical and also the metaphysical level. What is so important about this practice, what is so important about the energy, the calm, the angels, the Christ consciousness, whatever empowers me to do this, it is truly a great joy to help others. And over the last 5 or 6 years, my work has been transforming from strictly biological to also metaphysical. For example, I was working with a gentleman the other day, and he had a number of layers of problems, including breathing and other stuff. And to my mind's eye, it came up that between the ages of 3 and 5, something significant had happened. So I asked, what happened to you between the ages of 3 and 5? He had not told me this beforehand. I just went right to it. Okay, what happened to you at the age of 3 and 5? And he said, oh, that's when my mom and dad divorced. And I said, okay, the next question was, which one was a smoker? And she said, well, my dad was, but my mom smoked too. And this just opened up the whole cornucopia of information. And I then explained how this, even though this was now 50 years prior in his life, it was still affecting him today, affecting how he thought, how he felt, how he moved, because that nicotine, even though 50 years on and he never smoked, it was still affecting his biodynamic system. And with that, I suggested he do homeopathic remedies to neutralize that nicotine that flowed through his body inside his mother's womb. And that's an aspect of the work that I am just over the moon about, because as the person's age pops into my head, a woman, I asked her, we were working through her stuff and different physical issues, and I said point blank, what happened to you around the time you were 14? And they said, oh my gosh, that is when my father abused me. And it's like, okay. And so then we dived in on that, and we started clearing the energy of the anger, the frustration, the rage that she still held, even though in a conversation you'd never know it. She seemed very positive. So in this work and in my life, I am now finding a balance between the physical and the metaphysical, that of family of origin issues and even past lifetimes. In my work, I also do a process which I call soul convergence. Not only does this go to a place far beyond what's considered the Akashic records, there is dimensions upon dimensions that far exceed our 3 and 4 dimensions that we think of here. Other timelines and places that through my work I take a person to experience themselves. This is not me just saying, oh, this happened and you were Napoleon or you were Cleopatra in a past life. I don't do any of that. What I do is I open up sacred space. And in that sacred space, I invite in the person I'm working with. And perhaps for the first time in their life, they really get to experience their own self. And many people tell me before I start, it's like, oh, I never see things. I don't have a very good imagination. I cannot visualize. When I open up sacred space, all of that comes into them. All of that opens up. And just the tears, the laughter, the sadness, the joy, everything in between that a person then experienced that's been hidden from them for whatever reasons comes to the surface. And then as we work through them point by point and releasing them to light, all the issues that were facing that person in this life, family issues, money issues, loss issues, all of it, if you will, is released. All of the karma is released so that a person can then grow and be who they truly are. Imagine what it would be like to have been raised in an extraordinarily healthy environment. The food was from heaven. The water was so pure. And the people also had all of their stuff together. There was no baggage. To imagine growing up in that environment, to be loved, to be cared for, to be held by a community, the people that we would create. And that is all available within each one of us. Though some people go to a lot more trouble to find it than others. In this journey that I've learned to help myself, I have also learned to help others. And again, this is the greatest adventure I've ever been on, and it continues to unfold day to day. As a young man, I used to read a lot of science fiction and fantasy novels, Lord of the Rings, and of course Star Wars and other movies and films and stories, and none of them come close to my real life, of which I am so grateful.
Yes, very, very interesting life experiences there and things to offer. And you got me to jot down a few things on my notepad here that I'd like to talk about and touch on a little bit more. First of all, when I first connected with you on the screen, I noticed that you have an image of chakras behind you. And when it comes to chakras, it's one of those things that you think are making life a little too complicated, but then you want to try a little bit of variety in life and experience with it. Whenever I talk about chakras, I can't help but pick on George Kavassilis, because he always says chakras were one of the consciousness restricting mechanisms of Atlantis. You really don't need to obsess about them or focus on them, because it's better to just go with the heart soul essence all the time. And I've always said, more power to you, George, if you can just go with the heart and live life to the fullest. But don't you maybe want to try a little variety in here and maybe go with the third eye once in a while, or the crown chakra, or something like that. And as someone who deals, I'm sure, with the chakras regarding your medical work, would you say that if I were to just focus on someone's heart soul essence all the time, I'm not going to be able to get all of the answers, maybe using each of the chakras in my work, or your work, I should say, yeah, you get what I mean, is the best way to go in that regard.
Okay, well, I'm going to kind of break that down a little bit. The idea of the energy fields of the chakra are a wonderful starting point. And many, many practitioners, yoga teachers, usually start a meditation of the chakras, and they start with the first chakra and the red chakra, and they work the person up through their body, through their core, through the heart, the throat, the third eye, and the crown. In my own work, I have found that the most powerful chakra of all is, of course, the heart chakra, the green, and that is where so many I have worked with are often so far away. If you've ever met anybody, at least once in your life, probably or more, that person is completely in their head. And in the journey of helping heal, the farthest journey I've ever had to take people on is literally from their head to their heart. And I know that's a parable of several stories. But until a person can become connected to their heart, feel their body, feel their emotions, and feel their whole life, I feel that no matter how much else we meditate on or practice with, that there's still going to be a void. I say this often, is that we are all waiting for that hug that never comes. And that hug, that connection to the divine, we don't think of it about being our second chakra or fourth or fifth. We can think and imagine ourselves connected into space, putting that golden cord into the earth. But when we meet someone that brings us joy, or that we see something that enlivens our spirit, we feel it in our heart first. And to me, that's the ultimate touchstone. So when working with people, being fully aware of the different chakra fields, I find one of the things that is most important is to help them enter their own heart so they can allow the space to expand to help them be who they are. Every second of every day of every moment, our heart is beating and creating an electromagnetic field, as the scientists and the biologists have since discovered. And if we operate from another part of our body, again, we kind of get locked into that field. If we're always in our head, you can have some very wonderful conversations about theory or mathematics or other esoteric things, but it's not the same as being there. Another way to look at this, the difference between being in the heart chakra and the other chakras, is like reading a book about an airplane and how to fly an airplane. But until you actually get in the cockpit, start the engine, push the throttle up, and get that airplane down the runway and actually lift off, you're not flying. And so it's been my experience in the work and the practice over the last 16, 17 years that it is about helping a person enter that heart sacred space where everything else follows.
Very, very heartwarming story and enlightening there that you all had to offer. I've never heard someone express the issue that way. But, well, moving on to something else you said, you just kind of made me almost drop my jaw and eyes pop out of the sockets when you talked about how tobacco, some guy who was smoking it, is harming himself. And, well, I'm actually right now, this very moment, smoking some Apache tobacco out of a Jaguar pipe, which I often do during my shows, as I've heard about the benefits. I guess you seem to think tobacco is harmful, but I've heard benefits. I mean, it's nothing like the garbage that you get in commercial cigarettes. No. In fact, I don't even advocate smoking cigarettes because you inhale directly into your lungs. That's the quickest way to become addicted. It's better to not inhale, let the smoke drag in your mouth and let it seep through the mouth linings in your mouth, which causes it to gradually get into the blood-brain barrier and also gradually leave the system, which doesn't cause you craving for more tobacco like smoking cigarettes would. And it does seem to have medicinal properties. Even George Cavazos, he's said Mapacho tobacco in particular is it has the highest nicotine content, but it's also the most medicinal of all tobaccos. Ayahuasca shamans may know a thing or two about that. They say it's Mapacho is a valuable asset to ayahuasca in more ways than one. And I mean, just because nicotine is a pesticide, well, does that instantly mean that it's supposed to be harmful to humans? If you swallow a big nicotine ball, yeah, you're going to die. But if you use it in another way, it's not going to be like harmful to you. Like dogs eat chocolate, they'll be dead, but humans love chocolate. And there's many examples I can give us how something that's loving for one creature is harmful to another. And so, I mean, are you really asserting that tobacco is harmful? And are you going to come out and tell me I don't advocate you smoke Mapacho during your radio shows? It's not, it isn't good for you in the end. Those other people don't really know what they're, dare I say, talking about.
Well, let's just break that down again for a moment. Okay, in the particular case I was speaking of, the man's father was smoking whatever commercial available cigarettes, and mother was also smoking commercially available cigarettes. And when we think about it, like fast food, though is filling in calories, is completely devoid of nutrients. So let's back that up. Imagine, if you will, going out into the wilds of the world to where tobacco was first grown, out of the ground, before pesticides and chemicals and GMOs and all the other things that they've done to the plants and the hybridization. And that's a far cry from what's being produced today. For example, when I actually worked in drug rehab for 3 years at a VA hospital in Long Beach, California. And I get to hear all kinds of stories and beliefs and everything about different drugs. Well, look at it this way, is that in the wilds of the Andes, that the local people will basically chew on coca leaves for a little bit of a buzz and energy because they're working at 6,000 and 7,000 and 8,000 feet elevations. And when we think about sugar, like sugar cane, to chew on sugar cane actually has medicinal value with all the fiber and everything. Elephants actually chew on sugar cane and they don't get cancer. And I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. So when we take the coca leaf as nature intended, it's a very mild boost, much like caffeine, but a different neural pathway. So when they make cocaine, they take your 50 pounds of coca leaves and they do what they do to denature it, and they pull out the coca paste, which then is made into cocaine. In the same sense, they take their 50 pounds of sugar cane with all the vitamins and minerals and everything, they run it through the grinder and the press, and then they pull out, as they start to cook it, they cook out all the vitamins and minerals, and what they have left in one pile is white granulated sugar. In the other pile is the molasses. And the molasses is the good stuff. It has all the great magnesium. And that's what I learned from the migraines. It's like magnesium is really high in molasses. So white sugar and cocaine are very similar in the process that they're created, taking something from nature and then super concentrating it. And of course, all the aforementioned problems, because white sugar is legendary about the problems it causes in the body and immune system, and more. But again, within nature, the closer you get to the original source of the material, you're a whole lot better off. And doing something medicinally or as part of a shamanistic ritual is a far cry from having a pack or 2-pack a day.
Exactly. And now that sugarcane example, I actually also suck on a stick of rock candy a day, and there I read somewhere that traditional Chinese medicine does actually recognize rock. They don't call it rock candy, but what it is as a medicine there. But I'm thinking, well, maybe their version of rock candy may actually contain like some of the molasses that you talked about, and not just the pure sugar. I mean, I think the stick on rock candy, the sugar there, that's completely a different essence of sugar crystal than the garbage sugar that you find in restaurant packets. But still, is it not kind of good for you sugar unless you include the molasses in it, or are you not really an expert on this subject? I'm just saying traditional Chinese medicine.
Again, yeah, I've done some deep dives on all this. So again, sugar by itself has no cofactor, it has no enzymes, it's devoid of any minerals. It's basically carbon and hydrogen bound together. And so we think of carbohydrates, that's where the term comes from. Well, if you go to your local gas station and fill up the car, you put hydrocarbons in it. And so the difference between gasoline and sugar is which way the carbon and hydrogen atoms are arranged. One is the fuel for the body and one is the fuel for the car, but they both burn. And if a car didn't have a muffler and the oil and the different parts of the engines to keep the engine from overheating, it would break down or explode. And in the human body, that the body has to scavenge for the nutrients out of the bones, out of the cell structure, to buffer the acidity of the sugar. Sugar is really highly acidic. That's why it will rot your teeth. It will melt. If you left your sugar on your teeth 24/7, it'll literally melt your teeth. So it's that acidity that the body has to deal with. Now, other sugars like molasses, which is not as high in sugar, but it has all the other good stuff. And again, natural sources like apples, oranges, bananas, sugar cane, these kind of things. When we're eating them, we're also getting the cofactors for our body to be able to digest them. And remember, white sugar does not exist in nature. Table salt does not exist in nature. And most of the foodstuffs that sit on the shelf with a plastic or box around it, whether you go to your favorite local store that shall not be named, or not, if it comes in a box, it's been cooked or denatured from what was originally planned on this planet. So when we eat foods that have been stripped of all their benefits, it's just empty calories, and that's where we age, that's where disease comes from, and Lord knows. And we can go on a whole other conversation just about the toxicity of food these days.
Yes. Now, the thing you just said about sugar being able to rot the teeth, there's another thing that could potentially harm teeth, and being someone who can help people with medical problems, maybe you can help with this. My father had some neighbors, the Barkley family, when he was a kid that he remembered. Their father was a dentist, and he was very picky about them not having candy. But the interesting thing was they got cavities at a higher rate than everybody else. Why was that? Well, I contend that it's the same reason that the mother who always worries about her kids getting the flu every winter sees her kids getting the flu every winter, but then when she's taught about how the law of attraction works and how you are a reflection of your reality, when she started envisioning her kids being healthy in the winter, they instantly stopped getting the flu. I contend that the Barkley family father, being the obsessive dentist that he was always stressing out about his kids getting cavities all the time, that he was putting holes in their teeth with his thoughts and emotions. So with that being...
And it's possible, again, that might have caused the kids stress because it's the unwritten things going on behind the scenes trying to please father. However, I would also take it up a notch, were these children getting enough vegetables and lettuce and vitamin K2 and vitamin D3 and not just calcium, but also magnesium, zinc, and one most people don't even know of, boron. Because without all these other materials as part of the food stuff, your teeth won't form properly and the bones won't form properly. And the truth of this is that the number one reason kids wear braces is because mother's womb could not produce enough of these nutrients to have the child have a good jaw. And I use this as evidence. Look at a picture of some kid in Africa out in the middle of nowhere, or the Amazon rainforest, or choose whatever primitive culture you wish, Aboriginal life in Australia. And you look at those kids and they smile, and they have a full set of teeth, including their wisdom teeth. What's that about? Well, back in the 1930s, that a specific dentist found out that the diet in America based on wheat, and the dentist's name was Weston Price, and his books are legendary in the Weston Price Foundation, that the number one problem with teeth and rotting of teeth were wheat-based products in this country going back to the 1920s and 30s. So we literally are what we eat, and metaphorically, we become what we believe and how we are influenced by the unsettled things. So together, those two things in action, if mom baked nothing but bread every day and fed what she thought was a good diet, if, depending on what kind of milk source, and that's where I would see that going. Having had braces myself and coming across this information, again, we could prevent so many childhood illnesses and problems like having to wear braces if we would but place women who are pregnant at the front of the line and give them the best natal care and nutrition and vitamins. Heck, if we fed them every day just to be happy and healthy as possible, all the problems that society faces today, many of them would simply vanish. For example, that if a mother is drinking Mountain Dew, I hope you're not drinking Mountain Dew. Mountain Dew is perhaps the most caustic, poisonous beverage on the planet, in my opinion. And the reason I say this is because in Mountain Dew is a material called bromated vegetable oil. And bromine is a classification of halogens, and it is almost chemically identical to iodine. However, it is not iodine. However, the body can't tell the difference if you ingest more bromine than iodine. And so what happens is that if the mother is drinking Mountain Dew, which seems to be the drink of choice everybody here in the South, that if the mother is pregnant and is drinking Mountain Dew, it literally steals the iodine from the infant that's growing and will make that child even more stupid. On the flip side, if the mother is eating lots and lots of foods with iodine in it, like dulse or seaweed or other materials, or even taking iodine supplementation, and ideally it should be above 12 to 15, well, about 12.5 milligrams a day, as the women do in Japan and Korea, where the smartest babies on earth on average are being born. If we did that here in the United States, the woman could actually raise their baby's IQ up to 30 points in the womb. That's like from, if mom is 110, the baby could be 140 IQ just by a nickel's worth of iodine every day. On the flip side, if the mother is eating foods that have bromine in it, which many of the breads do now, if they eat the bromine, it steals the iodine and can be so bad if the mother's drinking lots of Mountain Dew that there's actually a disease called Mountain Dew mouth, where the teeth literally grow sideways out of the jaw of the child.
That's very interesting about how pregnancy, diet, and behavior can affect the jaw of children. Wow, you learn something new every day. Now, another thing about health issues that I want to discuss with you. I just finished reading Dave Champion, author of Income Tax Shattering the Myths. He also wrote a book called Body Science. His science it appears accurate. His history is kind of off. He suggests that humans existed X amount of millions of years ago. They came on this earth and then they basically changed and adapted. I don't want to use the word evolved because evolution, as Darwin says, it is a lie, but evolved, adapted up to the humans of today. That's kind of not really what happened. We had Atlantis and Lemuria, and also the genetic modification of humans that Zachariah Sitchin talks about. But anyway, the point of his book, Body Scientist, really wasn't a history book. That was just something that he was kind of pointing at in his book, but he also said that ketosis is kind of the way to go because the human body is not supposed to be in glucosis. Carbs are not good for us. They are not, glucosis is not the way to go. Eating fat and proteins. You don't really need proteins as much as some people say you do because the body doesn't actually make it. It helps to get some if your body isn't making enough, I'm sure, but fat seems to be the way to go in regards to, like, eating fat can help you lose weight. It seems kind of counterintuitive, but it's not, because that's the when your body is burning fat for energy, it's helping keep the weight from converting to body fat stored away, and actually helps get the body fat in your body away while your source of energy that you're eating is mostly in fat. He doesn't really suggest that eating meat is bad for you in his book, and that kind of flies in the face of what a lot of people in the spiritual community seem to believe about how you want to try to eat less and less animal products every day of your life up until maybe you can become a true vegan. That's very hard for most humans, but they assert, spiritual people, many do, that that's the way you ultimately want to be a vegan. We're not supposed to be eating animal products, but tell that to Dave Champion in his book, which says ketosis is the way to go to keep your body from getting overweight and unhealthy. Do you agree or disagree?
Well, having been in a state of ketosis for the last 35 years, again, based on what I've gone through unintentionally, going through ketosis, not being able to gain weight despite of eating thousands of calories. It has its pluses and minuses. Again, pure ketosis is not healthy, and that's why, we would have fasts, or we would have events or festivals, and people would try and make up. But in our own culture and society, over the years, how we ate and what we ate has changed drastically. And unfortunately, because we don't live thousands of years, as some possible ancestors do, we can't go back to 1900 or 1850 and eat the foods of our ancestors, which tended to keep us much thinner and healthier, and we wouldn't have to eat as much. Remember, part of the whole obesity issue today is all of the empty calories, and especially carbohydrates again. And so if you stop eating carbohydrates, number one thing, and especially grains, which includes rice as well, your body will start burning body fat. And that's how our body stores, because in nature, for our million years plus of evolution, it is the harvesting of these crops that were very rare. You know, though we talk about bread and these kind of things, it's still a relatively new addition to our diets. And we would have had, we would have eaten fish or small game. The cattle that we consider as food today were not what our ancient ancestors ate. So, yes, I think keto-based diets are beneficial, but if we just get back to some of the more primal ways of eating, it should balance everything out and find a way to help heal the body. Primarily sources everything. If I could wave a magic wand and everybody would have their own private garden of a couple hundred square feet with real soil, with real enzymes and bacteria, and also the minerals in the soil would make a big difference. And that to me is much more important and often missed, is that, again, what is the source of the food we're eating? What's in the soil? What's the bacteria count? All these things, because without the bacteria in the soil, you won't have any vitamins, you won't have any minerals, because the plant won't absorb it.
Yes, more and more people need to make gardens, but also know how to take care of their gardens in the proper way. A lot has to do with the soil, as you point out. We have symbiotic relationship with the bacteria and all the rest of it. By the way, this is the point in the interview where it's been probably going to be more than 50% past the interview at this point, where I say, okay, you need to, folks, pay me on Patreon if you want to listen to the second half of this interview. Please consider doing that. Very enlightening things are always discussed in the second half of my show, as much as the first half. Very much appreciate if I could get some assistance from you guys with that. Still work at Whole Foods. I love the job very much, but if it would be nice to see the day where I can always make enough money from this radio show because enough people pay me to subscribe, that would be lovely. So I know we're all strapped for money in this time of great challenge, especially with inflation and all, but please consider, folks. So with that being said, second half of this interview, well, second